We have to confront squarely and honestly the twisted ideologies that these terrorist groups use to incite people to violence. Now, leading up to this summit, there's been a fair amount of debate in the press and among pundits about the words we use to describe and frame this challenge. So I want to be very clear about how I see it. Al-Qaeda and ISIL and groups like it are desperate for legitimacy. They try to portray themselves as religious leaders, holy warriors in defense of Islam. That's why ISIL presumes to declare itself the Islamic State. And they propagate the notion that America, and the West generally, is at war with Islam. That's how they recruit. That's how they try to radicalize young people. We must never accept the premise that they put forward, because it is a lie. Nor should we grant these terrorists the religious legitimacy that they seek. They are not religious leaders, they're terrorists. And we are not at war with Islam. We are at war with people who have perverted Islam. Now, just as those of us outside Muslim communities need to reject the terrorist narrative that the West and Islam are in conflict, or modern life and Islam are in conflict, I also believe that Muslim communities have a responsibility as well. Al-Qaeda and ISIL do draw selectively from the Islamic texts. They do depend upon the misperception around the world that they speak in some fashion for people of the Muslim faith, that Islam is somehow inherently violent, that there is some sort of clash of civilizations. Of course, the terrorists do not speak for over 1 billion Muslims who reject their hateful ideology. They no more represent Islam than any madman who kills innocents in the name of God represents Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism or Hinduism. No religion is responsible for terrorism. People are responsible for violence and terrorism. And to their credit, there are respected Muslim clerics and scholars, not just here in the United States, but around the world, who push back on this twisted interpretation of their faith. They want to make very clear what Islam stands for, and we're joined by some of those leaders today. These religious leaders and scholars preach that Islam calls for peace and for justice and tolerance towards others, that terrorism is prohibited, that the Quran says whoever kills an innocent, it is as if he has killed all mankind. Those are the voices that represent over 1 billion people around the world.
As there is in our Western democracies, Islam is a legal, political, and religious system, all in one, taking its authority solely from the Quran and from what Muhammad did and said in his life, and all is interpreted by its clerics. Islam means submission to the will of Allah, as revealed by Muhammad, and in its most virulent Islamist form, aims to take over the planet, as did communism and other forms of fascism. There are, alas, a great many verses in the Quran, however you translate them, and much that Muhammad did and said, which justify violence towards non-believers. It is therefore wrong to describe Islam as a religion of peace, as intoned by our political leaders and bien-pensant commentators in response to whatever the latest Islamist atrocity may be. What they mean is that the vast majority of the many millions of Muslims on this earth live peaceful and good lives, as indeed they do. But that isn't the same thing at all. And the odd thing is that if we try to talk about any of this, we are immediately accused of stirring up religious hatred. Yet most of us do not hate Islam. We may fear it, but all the hatred is in the breast of the Islamist, and it flows only in one direction, against us, the non-believers. Let me give you a recent example. You may have seen that 2 British jihadists murdered a British soldier, drummer Rigby, on the streets of Woolwich some 18 months ago. They gave a bystander a handwritten note, which was produced at their trial and of which I have a copy. In that note, they quote no less than 22 verses of the Quran to justify their action. Last November, we debated in the Lords the failure of our security services to prevent that atrocity, which our Prime Minister duly parroted was, and I quote, a betrayal of Islam. I have been described by two Muslim Labour MPs as diabolic for challenging the accuracy of that platitude, and for suggesting that our government should encourage our peaceful Muslim community to address the violence in the Quran and in what Muhammad said and did. I have, of course, challenged the MPs to a public debate, but answer comes there none. That was all I did. I just said that our government should get our peaceful community to address the violence in the Quran, and all hell was let loose on the left. And ladies and gentlemen, we have to get rid of another silly one, and it's this: oh, but there's a lot of violence in the Bible too. Well, Jehovah does indeed smite the uncircumcised quite a bit in the Old Testament, but I am not aware that Orthodox Jews are killing tens of thousands of people on the strength of it. But the New Testament and Christianity's founder are entirely good and non-violent. So I don't think we want to rise this one of the Bible being as violent as the Quran. And even so, we shouldn't hide from the bloodshed, which has come from within Christianity over the centuries. The 100 Years' War, a spot of bother across the pond, the Soviet Revolution, 2 world wars, the Holocaust and more, all erupted from within Christianity. But not today. Today, the collective dark side of human nature appears to be moving most strongly within Islam. Islam now has the religious fervor and energy, and I don't think we have much chance of standing up to it unless we start by recognizing it for what it is. I'll leave the military side to you people. But personally, I think we have to start by talking openly about Islam amongst ourselves and trying to draw our peaceful Muslim friends into that debate. In the end, only the vast majority of peaceful Muslims can deal with our violent minority. The problem is that they don't have to engage with us. All they have to do is sit there and say that the jihadists misinterpret the Quran and that Quran is a religion of peace. And here I leave you with another very worrying Muslim tenet, al-Hijra. This enjoins Muslims to follow Muhammad's example after he moved to Medina and accepted his host's hospitality until he was strong enough to send them into exile or kill them if they didn't convert to his new religion. And he killed quite a lot. You may have read about the Islamic takeover of many of our schools in Birmingham. One of those schools, ladies and gentlemen, is called the Al-Hijra School. So the tenet is alive and well in Birmingham and in many of our other cities. Of course, luckily for you, Islam is not so well entrenched with you as it is with us and in other European countries. You don't need to end up in our predicament. So please don't. As for us in Europe, all we can do is to start at least talking about Islam amongst ourselves with our peaceful Muslim friends. Let us hope they will engage with us. Or will they just become fellow travelers on their way to Al-Hijra? Since reform can only come from within Islam, let us hope they will assert their dominance over their tiny, violent minority. We are constantly told that this minority is so tiny. What is the great majority doing is what I want to know. They could, for instance, call a great Muslim council and declare that true Islam flows only from the peaceful verses of the Quran, and that the violent verses are to be internalized as the struggle between good and evil in each one of us. They could cast the jihadists out of Islam. Will they? I'm not so sure, ladies and gentlemen. We can but hope that they stand firm and do something like that. But I fear they won't. Let us see if they prove me wrong. Thank you.
Lord Pearson, thank you. We will be talking, I'm sure, in the